Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Esports Money, ZSM, Mac10, whatever you want to call me, and today we're going to be talking about net neutrality. What is net neutrality? Why does it matter? Who does it affect? And what's going to happen? This is not a video that has a special intro. This is not a video where I'm going to ask you to like it or subscribe, but I will ask you to like it so that it gets more views and more people see this, but I'm just echoing or signal boosting the general theme. Net neutrality is the idea that the internet should be open and free in the sense that it should be protected and that certain aspects, certain elements of the internet should not be favored compared to other elements of the internet. What I mean behind this, or for example, is if you are treating the internet as a utility in the same way that you treat electricity, and there are inherent differences there, there are some inherent differences there, but an electrical company or an electrical power plant does not charge you if you use X amount of kilowatt hours to power your computer differently than if you used it to power a drill in your garage, to power your toaster, to power your alarm clock, your surround sound stereo. You use X amount of power and you get charged for using X amount of power. This is not to do with data caps. Data caps suck, but that's not necessarily, it's an element of, but it's not the core component of net neutrality. The core component of net neutrality is to say the internet should be treated like electricity or water to the extent that visiting Google should not cost a different amount of money than visiting Facebook. And you shouldn't be able to legally, as an ISP or internet service provider, charge me a different amount of money if I want more bandwidth for specific websites. It also means that internet service providers cannot purposely reduce the speeds to specific websites. It means that when you have X amount of speed, it is the fastest possible speed that you can get at the allocated bandwidth that you pay for. That's what it means. There's a lot more going on, and there's a lot of activism beyond net neutrality, but net neutrality is the bare bones minimum requirement for a free and open internet and a decent service. And it's not entirely about the consumer in this sense. It's about freedom of expression, because when you're an internet service provider, you have the ability to control how much bandwidth goes out to customers to connect them to specific websites, if there is no net neutrality. So for example, if you're the Washington Post and you make an article about why net neutrality is important, why these Title II protections, which are protections put in 2015 by President Barack Obama, or President Barack Obama's appointee to the FCC to protect net neutrality, why they're important, then Comcast, in this example, just an example, not specifically targeting them, could be Verizon or AT&T, can throttle that connection so that it takes longer to load their website, so people are less likely to load it. They could even block the connection, theoretically. They could actually literally legally do that without these net neutrality provisions. And I am going to be the first to acknowledge I have a very liberal political bias. I'm very left-leaning in my own politics, but this is a bipartisan non-issue issue. This isn't a gun control or even abortion, and I say those because the people on either side really strongly believe that their side is right and we shouldn't be having a conversation about this. And I'm not going to mention my own opinions on this, but as far as net neutrality is concerned, it really does become a non-issue, because the only people in the entire world that benefit from this are the telecommunications companies that sell you internet access. Everyone hurts. Some hurt more than others, but everyone hurts. Now, you might be thinking, well, Google and Facebook and Apple and Microsoft, all of these people, Twitter, all of these people can stand up to the telecommunications company because together, all of these Silicon Valley giants are more powerful. In fact, I think mathematically they are way more powerful. They have way more money than all of these other giants. And all of them are opposed to the removal of these Title II provisions, or at least opposed to completely scrapping them in the way that the current head of the FCC wants them to be scrapped. Ajit Pai, P-A-I, is his name. And they are opposed to it, but they're not going to fight tooth and nail the way that everyone else will. And the reason being is because they can't be throttled. If you are Amazon.com, access to your website can't be throttled because you are one of the most used websites. People that aren't hardcore nerds like me, that don't use Reddit or they don't use 4chan or they don't use like all these weird social media sites, they use YouTube, they use Facebook, they use Amazon. And so these giant companies, Facebook and Google are the same thing, by the way. These giant companies are so big that if Comcast says, if Comcast tried to collect money from, let's say, Facebook to throttle their connection, Facebook would say, no. You try throttling us to your consumers and you guys will see what happens. The invisible hand of the market will smack you across the face. There's a lot of rhetoric about the invisible hand of the market, and I'm not going to get into a deep philosophical conversation about the nuances of capitalism in a world where we have the internet. It's not about market philosophy here. This is about protecting consumer rights. This is about protecting producer rights. Upload and download speeds are two separate things. Typically speaking, an internet connection is set up so that you're going to get 2 to 4 times as much download speed as upload speed because most people are more concerned with download. Personally, that ratio is a little bit different, or the ideal ratio is a little bit different for someone like me that produces a lot of content on a day-to-day basis, but I still download more than I upload. That upload is going to, that margin is going to get more narrow. This will come down to a tax on small content producers much more than it will the average user. But don't get it mistaken. Just because it's going to hit people like me that don't have a lot of money, that just do this on the side and put their heart and soul into it and dump all of their extra time and money into it, we will be hit harder than you, but you're still gonna be hit. You're still gonna feel it. Your connection to the internet, as far as websites that aren't the big ones, as far as websites that aren't the Googles, the Facebooks, the YouTubes, all of those connections are going to get worse, and they're going to get more expensive based on these restrictions on telecommunications companies being removed, these Title II protections being removed. So what can you do? You need to contact Congress. You need to go to the website fightforthenet.com or battleforthenet.com is the website. I've done a couple of calls myself on it, and it will basically give you a bunch of instructions on how you can contact your local representatives, your local congressmen, and express your beliefs in net neutrality all the way up. It can tell you how to write a letter. It can make it very simple to make an opinion heard. You can use a pre-selected script, and by script, it's more of state your opinion on these things and how they are important to you. It's not that specific, and I think they have options for it to be that specific if you really want it to be, because they're trying to push people. They're trying to make people comfortable expressing this opinion. This is the first time I think I've ever contacted my representative in my life, except for maybe SOPA. I think back in SOPA and PIPA were a thing in 2012, I want to say. I believe I contacted my reps during that. But this is the first time since, for sure. This is something this supersedes party lines. This supersedes everything else. Because you can no longer have a conversation about anything else if this goes away. This is the end of the internet as you know it, at least until 2020. It will probably go to court, and while it's going to court, all of these telecommunications companies will be rolling out their new packages. And the argument for net neutrality, I'm going to get a little bit into this, because with most issues, there are two sides of the coin. Gun control is good because it prevents people from getting shot. Gun control is bad because criminals have access to guns as well, and I also like owning guns. I mean, there's the debate about abortion. When does human life truly begin? When does it impede upon an adult, a currently living human's rights? There are two sides to this coin. This topic doesn't have two sides to its coin, and I'm going to try to demonstrate that by talking about the arguments being made in favor of removing these provisions. It's being called modernizing the internet by removing government overregulation. Government overregulation that literally protects internet. They're not describing it as slowing. They say, well, we don't want to slow down websites. We want to provide fast lanes for preferred websites and offer customers the ability to pay for fast lanes to those websites. I have Comcast Infinity. It's the only ISP I have in my neighborhood. I'm pretty sure we pay about $100 a month for this, and I get 220 down and 20 up. And I have never wanted for bandwidth for anything in the last 3 years. And for the first year of those 3, my internet was half the speed. Internet is getting to the point today where it is fast enough no matter what you're doing. This fast lane logic, this fast lane argument is BS. And if your internet is, if you have DSL, if you have something that's if you have something that's slower, it doesn't matter. Because the ISP is giving you the best, the fastest possible internet that it can if you're paying enough money. And there are times, I mean, they'll advertise X speed, you'll pay for it and you'll get less. But if you're paying for the most expensive package you can get from your ISP, they're not going to purposely throttle you right now. At least to the extent that they will once it's legal for them to charge you additional money based on the preferences you have for web browsing. Reddit is a website that's going to cost a lot of money to visit pretty soon if packages even allow you to visit it, because Reddit is extremely pro net neutrality. The same goes for Twitter. The same goes for a lot of other big websites. The only websites that are that are too big to be affected are Facebook's website, Microsoft, Google, and everything else they own. All of those websites will be immune to Amazon, potentially eBay. All of those guys will be very resistant, but in general, a free and open internet will die if this goes to pass. And the way this will pass, the way these provisions will be repealed, which, by the way, when Barack Obama was appointed head of the FCC, put these provisions into effect, they were challenged by Verizon and Comcast and a group of telecommunications organizations. I think Verizon specifically was the one, might have been Comcast. And it went to a court of appeals, and the judge said, the FCC is correct. You cannot, these are here to stay. And so when the FCC, who's going to challenge these? Is it going to be Facebook? Are they really going to stand up and challenge? Are they going to be the ones to fight? And while they fight them, they're still in effect. The changes the FCC made are still in effect, even if it's in appeals. We will still be being throttled. We'll still be paying extra money. And the only chance that we would have at this being repealed is if it got shot down in court, which it probably won't, because we have a new administration, unless it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, or we wait until 2020 and then we have a honestly, I believe Mark Zuckerberg's probably looking to make a run for president, and even though Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook is not directly tied to net neutrality, he is personally very pro net neutrality, and I think that he would make it a personal... Whoever runs for the... I'll just say this. Whoever runs for the Democratic Party in 2020 will make net neutrality a big issue. The thing about net neutrality is no one ever talks about it when they're running for office, because if you have intentions to change it, you don't advertise it, because no person wants these provisions changed. And if you plan on protecting them, you don't say it because it's supposed to be a given. The only time you talk about it is if you're drawing attention to it because someone is messing things up. The language the FCC is using describes the provisions that Barack Obama put in 2015 as if they're holding the net back, as if there's some sort of overburden, it's some sort of overburdening that's happening, some sort of... It's as if the internet hasn't been able to develop and grow since 2015. If you want examples of when internet companies have done this in the past, Google it. There's dozens and dozens of instances where they basically got into court with the FCC, and the FCC said you cannot do this. There was an instance where Comcast was was throttling BitTorrent clients in the between 2007 and 2010, and this was shot down. Even though a lot of those individuals were using the ability to torrent as a way to acquire illegal content, so pirated goods. A large portion of them were not. In fact, Windows Update uses torrent, I believe, right now. To a certain extent, it uses a similar technology to torrent. And Blizzard's own web updater back in the day used torrent. So there's a lot of legal instances and a lot of appropriate instances for this technology to be used for people to download content. And Comcast was throttling or blocking at all, and the FCC said, it doesn't matter, you can't do that, and you are not a legal entity that can pass judgment on that. Comcast can send you a letter or send you an email that says you cannot be downloading this illegal content on our service or we will stop your service altogether, but Comcast can't specifically block me from downloading that service. Comcast can report a person to the police for pirating X amount of data or having questionable data. Comcast can't take action on their own other than end the service. They can't pick and choose which websites I get to look at under the current provisions. And unless something changes soon, they will be able to. There are 5 people that are at the head of the FCC, 2 Democrats and 3 Republicans, if that matters to you. Both of the Democrats are very pro-net neutrality and are voting no on repealing these provisions. The 3 other individuals, Ajit Pai being the most vocal of them and the head of the FCC, will be voting yes currently. They all have public Twitter accounts, they all have public email addresses you can contact, but these are appointed, not elected officials. And this is why people like Battle for the Net are promoting going to Congress and telling Congress to stop them. Because Congress can stop them, and we vote for Congress, and we never voted for anyone in charge of the FCC. Trump or Obama just selected them and put them there. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this content, hit those like and subscribe buttons, but that's not the point. This is not a happy video. This is a very nervous video. I have sunk probably $500 into this channel, and this year alone, I've probably sunk $500 into this channel. I've sunk back I haven't sunk back too much extra money, but I've sunk back all of the money that I've made from this channel easily back into it, and probably a little bit more. And I've spent way over 1,000 hours growing this. And I think as a small content producer, this is apocalyptically bad for me. If I have to start paying for the upload speed I want to deliver content to you, this could make it so expensive for me to produce this content that it no longer becomes feasible for me to pursue this dream. Thank you.